in addition to all the work we do in bringing people together, is we're also looking at how will we scale this and really focusing on what is preventing us from getting, we've got the early adopters from getting that next bulk of the industry into this space. And you'll hear from my amazing colleagues, Adam Cotin and Mary Purdy, about the work that has grown out of this collective action. But while I focus a little bit more on how we bring this collective action to bear. The reason that we are able to dive into this work that you all will keep hearing about throughout the time through this session is because we bring so many people together. I like to say we begin and end with farmers, because without them, none of this work is going to happen. And then we work, for those of you familiar, we work through the middle of the supply chains, the seed folks, the buyers, traders, transporters, processors, brands and retailers. You'll hear from one of our favorite brands, SIMPLi, in just a little bit. We engage with farm support, really giving all of the technical and financial and other assistance to the farmers who need it, the scientists and the academics who are able to back up the work that we are doing with studies and with ideas, the investors that make this all financially possible, policy advocates at state and federal level. We are looking whole system at everyone we can bring into this work so that folks understand not only the value of the work we're doing, but how to do it, because a lot of the gaps that we discover are where people don't know where to go to for support in making these transitions, which you'll hear more about from Adam Cohen in just a few minutes. How we spark action, this is exactly what I'm really focusing on, is we bring folks together. We have for about a decade, which is fantastic. We have woven our way through the agricultural space to really identify what is this work that we need to be focusing on. And I'm so excited to bring together this ability to weave these pieces together and then sort of show you how it all works in a case study. So since the last 5 years, we've had our soil and climate initiative really focusing on that on the ground. What does transition look like? What does it look like when we step away from the conventional system and we see regenerative as being this amazing off ramp to get you off of that conventional system, to get you moving towards better soil health, to get you moving towards more nutrient density, to get you moving towards reducing and eliminating synthetics, and resulting in bringing down the cost of farming and increasing the ability, on farm enterprises and crops that can be grown. A few years later, we were so excited to weave our nutrient density work into that, because when you've got that healthier soil, you get more nutrient dense food, and that has such an amazing effect on the human body and diet related diseases and all of these other pieces that affect your day-to-day life as well as your long-term piece. And Mary is going to dive really well into that in a few minutes. Our Delta Regen Rice Plus is a newer project, really focusing on how do we bring back supply chain strength in specific regionalities. So Delta Regen looking at rice, looking at other crops that grow in rotation in the Mississippi Delta, and how we can improve the soil health behind them and the quality of those crops. And then underlying all of this work is our newest initiative, which is really a continuation of work we've been doing for 4 or 5 years now, but focused on policy at the state and federal level. How do we ensure that the systems that exist are supporting this transition and not hindering it? Because we know that so many farmers need that support from their state government, from their federal government, from their local government, to make these transition happen and to make the ends meet on a lot of this work. So with that said, please reach out to me if you have questions, if you're interested in getting involved. Would love to connect. And with that, I'm really excited to bring my colleagues into this conversation to talk about the work they're leading to change this system. So Adam, over to you.
Thanks, Jessica, and hey everybody. Thanks for joining us on a Monday afternoon. It's a pleasure to be able to share with you all. We had a really successful session in person at Climate Week last week, and look forward to making some additional connections here. So, as Jessica mentioned, my name is Adam Cotin. I'm the managing director of the Soil and Climate Initiative, or SCI. And we like to call ourselves a farm to shelf regenerative agriculture transition program, which means that we're really here to advance the kinds of market connections and advance the farming practices as well as the purchasing decisions of brands and ultimately consumers to really make the market case for regenerative agriculture and all that it brings. And so when we're talking about regenerative agriculture, fundamentally what we're talking about is systems and practices that are biologically based, that are leading to improvements of the life in soil and the ability of the soil and the broader agroecosystem to function as a biological system. And so talking a little bit about some of the outcomes that we look at through our program and the ways that we translate those into meaningful insights for farmers. If you go to the next slide, we've been very excited about this opportunity to jump into talking more deeply about nutrient density, and you'll hear from Mary in a few about all of the really compelling research and knowledge that's out there that's been built up over the last number of years. But fundamentally, I think it's important to ground ourselves in the current reality of where things are, especially here in the United States, as far as where the farm economy is at. Just to throw a couple of stats at you, you can see some very doomy headlines here on the screen. But about, according to a recent survey, about half of farmers in the United States think that we are on the brink of a farm crisis. Um, for corn farmers this year, they're looking at margins that are $161 per acre loss, which means essentially folks who are growing corn in the United States this year are paying $161 per acre for the privilege of growing corn for the market. The fertilizer costs across NP and K have gone up by 50, 60% over the last 4 or 5 years for a variety of reasons. And at the same time, a lot of traditional trade opportunities are shifting and going away, or at least temporarily. So it's very, very frankly a difficult time to be talking with farmers on the ground about change in practice and taking on the kind of risk really that is entailed by moving from a conventional system to a more as we like to call a regenerative system. And so I think it's just really important to ground ourselves in, if you could hit the next slide for my animation to bounce on. There we go. It's really important to talk about farmer success and how farmers need to be involved in this conversation about unlocking nutrient density in food. Fundamentally, they're the ones who are going to both help us advance the state of knowledge about how soil health and these kinds of practices can lead to market scale transformation for nutrient density outcomes and quality outcomes. And also, frankly, there's just a real crisis that needs to be addressed simultaneously to the crisis of nutrients and nutrient density and nutrition in our food, which again, Mary will be really giving some stats and figures on. You go to the next slide. So the good news is that a lot of the metrics that are kind of the new wave, if you will, of metrics for farmers to incorporate into their agronomic decision making can also be helpful in pointing towards nutrient density connections. And I have a references slide at the end, but Mary also has a ton of great references for you to look at. But one of the things that we really focus on in our work with farmers is bringing forward these biologically based soil health metrics into the conversation, so that an understanding of how the biology of the soil impacts things like drought resilience and phosphorus use efficiency and biomass and the stability of yields under variable weather. All of those have real direct implications for farmer decision making. And again, at the same time, we can see how the kinds of outcomes that we're seeing across, activity of actinomycetes and AMF or vascular mycorrhizal fungi in the soil are increasing. We're seeing that those same metrics can be associated with the kinds of nutrient density connections you see on the right side here, like improved accumulation of different micronutrients and minerals, things like phenolics and antioxidants and all that good stuff. So I just wanted to make the point that we have this opportunity to leverage a lot of the advancements in the kinds of metrics that can be used for farming, and that frankly, in some cases, represent a pretty significant shift in how farmers are thinking about the nutrients they apply and how they do things like incorporate cover crops or changes in tillage practices into their systems, and this conversation about nutrient density. I think at the same time that the state of the science on nutrient density and what's in our food has advanced significantly, the same thing is true for soil science and the understanding of how soil science can be integrated into agricultural decision making. So you go to the next slide. Just a little bit more background on who we are and what we do. As I mentioned, we work directly with farmers. We have about 165 farmers, primarily based in North America, but also a couple of pilots abroad. And we equip them with advanced soil health testing and interpretation, peer-to-peer networks with other farmers. And really, our goal is to de-risk the transition to regenerative agriculture, finding all the different ways that we can bring farmers along on a journey of improvement, and finding ways that they can farm better while also farming smarter for the environment, for the climate, and ultimately for the quality of their food and the resiliency of their economies. And part of the way we do that is we work with brands and other folks in the supply chain to contribute to the kinds of services that we offer. And then we also do have a third-party verified mark that can go on certain products. There's a separate verifier that uses a farm standard we've developed with a bunch of evidence and outcomes to validate claims for the market. If you go to the next slide. And we work, again, primarily in North America, primarily in the United States. Just a preview of some of the different places that we work. Jessica mentioned the Regen Rice Plus project, which just received a National Fish and Wildlife Foundation grant, which we're super excited about. We'll be launching that project in early November. If you happen to have connections in the Mississippi Delta region, let me know, and we'd love to have you out there in the field with us. And we're really seeking to focus on crops that are not necessarily high value specialty crops. Oftentimes it's annual crops that are grown, as Jessica mentioned, in rotations with other crops. And there are challenges to unlocking the value of regenerative markets for some of these types of cropland systems, but we see tremendous value given that they make up a vast majority of the cropland acreage here in the United States. If you go to the next slide, please. Our version of the Hippocratic Oath is first let them farm. Really, our goal is to let farmers find new and exciting ways to be better farmers and to achieve their goals as farmers. And then the conservation and climate and all of the other benefits, including quality benefits, kind of ladder from there. And so we provide technical support, peer support, financial support. We have opportunities for philanthropic investors as well as brands and public funding to directly support implementation of practices on acres. And then I like to talk about our moral support, which really is valuable, especially in difficult times like this. And all of that leads to, if you go to the next animation there, what we think is there we go. Deeper commitments, better data that can allow us to tell the kinds of stories about the connections between soil health and nutrient outcomes, and lasting results. And that the farmers that we work with, many of them have been with our program for over 3 years now. We have a very, very low attrition rate. Really, only a couple of folks have dropped out of the program. And we really see that as a sign that it's possible to talk to farmers and engage them in things like regenerative transition without scaring them off or having them take on so much risk that that it becomes a burden. And I think the opportunity here when we start talking about the nutrient density connection and hopefully rewarding farmers for investing in practices and outcomes that lead to more nutrient dense and nutrient rich food is that it's a win-win, right? It becomes its own pull for the farmer as well as for the consumer to be investing in regenerative agriculture practices and the in many cases mindset shifts that that entails. Fundamentally, we're interested in helping the farmers become more profitable and have better, more resilient farm businesses, given all the different shocks that they're subject to in this day and age. And if the nutrient density conversation can support that and the right incentives are passed up the supply chain to farmers, and then the results are passed back down to brands and consumers, then to us that's really a huge shift in how this movement moves forward. You go to the next slide. Um, just an example of how we work. We are, I'm just seeing there's a comment in the chat, but I don't know if I mentioned before, but we are a nonprofit entity, and that is an important part of how we work. But one of the brand collaborations that we've been really excited to expand over the last 6 months or so is that we teamed up with the breakfast brand Seven Sundays, which is based in Minnesota and has delicious products that are sold nationwide. We should check them out. And so they've sponsored now 15 farms that are in their direct trade program that are supplying a vast majority of their sunflower and sorghum ingredients for their products. And so through Seven Sundays contribution to our program, we were able to attract additional investment primarily from philanthropic funders. And we were able to go out to these farmers, these 15 farmers, and say, look, Seven Sundays is sponsoring X number of acres on your larger farm. What if you brought the entirety of your farm in so that we're working across the entirety of your acres, other crops that you're selling to other markets, and we're able to advance soil health practices and the outcomes and monitoring on those acres as well. And frankly, it's a pretty sweet deal because we're able to subsidize the vast majority of those costs. And it makes a lot of sense in terms of expanding that to their broader acreage. They then have opportunities in the rest of their sales channels to be able to tell this story and to be able to bring some of the outcomes to bear on the attractiveness of their ingredients. And so we were able to effectively 10x the 2,400 acre commitment that Seven Sundays made into a 24,000 acre in transition project. And to go back to the slide I showed earlier about the soil health metrics, all of those soil health metrics and more are all provided and interpreted in detail for the farmers. We talk about the so what of it, and we connect them with other farmers and folks who are on the ground who can help them really learn from and move forward their practice as a result of that knowledge. And if you go to the next slide. Mary's going to talk a little bit about this, but we're really excited to be a part of the Regen Nutrition Project with Edacious and the Nutrient Density Initiative. And really, our hope is to use the data that we've collected, again, for the purposes of agronomic decision making, and then translate that into stories and insights about how particular practices, for example, might be correlated with certain nutrient density outcomes or how certain soil health metrics might be correlated with nutrient density outcomes. Because the more we can tell this story across the almost infinite number of different scenarios that we have in the agricultural system, the more powerful the story will be, and the more we can bring consumers and everyone else along on this journey. So Mary will share a little bit more about how that works and what the partnership with Edacious looks like. And I think I just got my references slide. Oh, there we go. Okay. Oh, actually, my references slide got hidden probably because it was a little too boring, but we can share that out later if you're interested. Anyway, thanks for the time. Look forward to the Q&A.
Okay. I guess I'm up next, everybody. Hello, such a delight to be here with you all this afternoon. And I am Mary Purdy. I'm the managing director of the Nutrient Density Initiative. We just changed our name actually from the Nutrient Density Alliance because we have been an incredible alliance for the past few years, but we really are transitioning to a kind of organization or program where we are taking a little bit more action, really working on trying to facilitate pilots and projects and really come up with solutions that we're very, very excited about. So this conversation is about the soil nutrition connection. And we as a group like to think of ourselves as a hub for collective action. We are farmers, we are ranchers, we are brands, we are businesses, we are people in the food as medicine and nutrition space. And we are all working together to educate, advocate, and activate, as I said, around that connection between regenerative agriculture or soil building agricultural practices, which we know are such an incredible pathway for solving our climate crisis, for solving or at least addressing our environmental crisis, and improving our food quality, which we know can have a huge impact on human health. So next slide. Okay. If you have taken a plane ride recently, maybe there's 150 people on that plane. I want you to imagine yourself on that plane, right? 150 people. We're seeing a lot of these preventable non-communicable diseases that are diet related. So out of that 150 people, about 75 of them have prediabetes or diabetes. About 10 to 15 of them only are metabolically healthy. About 50 of them have a serious lifetime risk for cancer. About a third of those people, again, about 50 of them, I'm so sorry, about 75 of them or 100 of them are either obese or overweight. And just a real qualifier, that is determined by BMI, which isn't always a great indicator of metabolic health, but nonetheless, it's at least a gauge of where people are. And if there are 15 teenagers on that flight with you, about 3 to 5 of them are also pre-diabetic and potentially have fatty liver disease. So this is a huge issue, and this is absolutely preventable. Next slide, or next, please. We also know that about the majority of our foods are coming from ultra-processed foods. And the majority of the protein that we consume is coming from animal sources that are very often poor quality animal sources, less nutritious, what we're seeing in the research now. And what's interesting when we think about this from a climate perspective, 40% of the crops that we are growing are going to feed animals. That's a huge amount of resources. 1 billion pounds of pesticides are used in the United States every single year. And our chemical fertilizer, our synthetic use of fertilizer, has increased by 800% over the past 75 years or so. That's a huge difference. Next slide. The other thing to take note of here is that the food we're consuming now is actually less nutritious. 20 to 25 to 50, oh, not quite yet, not quite yet, not quite yet. Go back. Can we go back to the other slide? Thank you so much. So about 25 to 50% less nutrient dense than foods were 50 to 70 years ago. These are things like iron, copper, magnesium, calcium, zinc, and all kinds of vitamins, including some of those really key bioactive compounds, otherwise known as by many people as antioxidants. And why is this important? Because every single chemical reaction that is happening in your body is driven by nutrients. So the production of your neurotransmitters that make you mentally aware and happy, driven by nutrients. The synthesis of all of your immune system anti-inflammatory compounds that is driven by nutrients. The enzymes that your liver actually creates to counteract some of the carcinogens that come into our body, that is driven by our nutritional status. So our body and our brain is actually functioning in accordance with the nutrition that we get from our food. So we often hear, well, we are what we eat, and I might counteract that with saying, well, kind of. And people often say, food is our medicine, right? And I say, well, it should be, or it should be our source of health. However, what we know is a tomato is not a tomato, is not a tomato. Next slide now, Jessica. So I present to you, the science is absolutely clear, without a doubt. Next. Food begins in the soil, and it actually provides us with 95% of the food that we consume is contingent upon healthy soil. When soil is healthy, human health benefits. Soil health And the fertility of that soil, all of those microorganisms, also has a direct influence on the nutritional value of those food crops grown in that. So those are providing all of those essential nutrients, vitamins, and that is the medium through which a plant survives and thrives and flourishes. Next. And we also know that when nutrition, or rather when soil is nutrient deficient, the uptake by those plants is also thought to be low, which has an impact on their nutritional status. Next slide. I love this graphic. I'm a real visual person. So you can see here, this is from the Food and Agricultural Foundation, or organization rather. You can see all these beautiful nutrients in the soil. And then you can see the soil helping to take the plant, and the plant is uptaking all of those nutrients. And then when we get to eat those nutrients from that plant, we are getting all of those vitamins and minerals and other nutrients that help our physiological function to be optimized. Next. And what is key here are the microbes, right? That mycorrhizal network underneath the ground is playing a huge role. The plants can't necessarily reach all of those nutrients. So the microbes are like, hey, we got you covered. Let us grab some of those nutrients and bring them to you. And the plant says, thank you so much, and actually offers some molecules for those microbes to munch on. And there's a wonderful symbiotic relationship. In fact, in order for the plant to uptake all of those nutrients, it is absolutely essential that those microbes and that mycorrhizal network underground are optimized. However, we know that soil has been extremely eroded because of the excessive use of fertilizers, because of the excessive use of pesticides, which are an umbrella, a term for herbicides and fungicides and insecticides. Next slide. And there are huge health implications of the use of these agrochemicals. When we are using an excessive amount of fertilizer, that actually prevents that really wonderful deep formation of the roots of the plants to have that relationship with those microbes. It also reduces the diversity of the microbes, which we know is key for a healthy soil profile, and the production of those phytochemicals, which are so key for our well-being. And we know that runoff from fertilizer can contaminate groundwater, can create dead zones, can have an effect on people's issues that are related to thyroid function because of the excessive amount of fertilizers contained in that water that people are actually consuming. When it comes to excessive pesticide use, remember, pesticides are meant to kill all living things, right? So that can include killing some of those, or at least minimizing some of the microbial diversity that exists in the soil. And the exposure to pesticides, both direct and indirect, has been linked to endocrine issues. This is reproductive and thyroid issues, cardiovascular disease, neurodegenerative diseases, things like Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, birth defects, diabetes, respiratory illness. The list goes on and on. And we've also seen there to be some research that consuming some of these foods that have pesticide residues may have an impact on our own human gut microbiome. And lastly, and I think this is a really key piece that we're going to be learning a lot more about over the coming years, is those pesticides also inhibit the ability of that plant to create those beautiful phytochemicals. So think of a plant in nature. Normally, it would activate its defense systems in response to an adverse weather condition or a pest or some kind of a predator. And it activates that defense system to squirt out these phytochemicals, right? And those phytochemicals are incredibly beneficial when we consume them. However, when there are pesticides, the plant is basically saying to itself, well, gosh, the pesticides are doing all the work for me. I don't need to activate my defense systems. I'm fine. Let them do everything for me. And then it has fewer phytochemicals. And we're seeing that in the data too, when we are doing some of this nutrient density testing that, that Adam and Jessica were talking a little bit about. Next slide. However, we know there's a solution or a potential pathway, and that is using these practices, whatever you call them, regenerative, organic, agroecological. These are the practices that help to determine the health of the soil. I know there's a lot of pushback about definitions, and I want to move away from that and really focus on the idea that when soil is healthy, when we have those soil health indicators, like Adam was talking about it, and I'm so glad to be working with SEI and SEA as a result, because what we're focused on is the soil. When we can see health built into the soil, we are seeing these kinds of results: higher micronutrient levels, higher levels of phytochemicals, even improved carbohydrate composition and fiber levels. We also see a greater amount of diversity in those microbes on plants than those plants that are grown conventionally. And yes, a plant has microbes on them, on it, and you are actually consuming those plants with microbes. So you are actually consuming those microorganisms from the plant's microbiome. And that's good for us because that's a way that we are able to get more microbes into our own gut. Additionally, there are fewer levels of heavy metals. And of course, always a good thing, less exposure to chemicals. We've also seen some data to show that when people have an organic intake that's higher than the typical person, that has been associated with reduced incidence of infertility, birth defects, metabolic syndrome, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and numerous other chronic diseases. I want to take a note here, or a moment here, to just note that we also know that people who have access to these kinds of foods often have access to things that may contribute to their health profile as well, like access to healthcare, more financial stability. So I want to just honor that as well. But I still think it's worthy to remark upon. And one thing that we're really excited about that we're seeing again more and more in the research, and from just a subjective point of view, more flavor. And this isn't necessarily about flavor that we talk about in terms of it being better than something else, because we know flavor is subjective, but there's more robust flavor profile. And that comes directly as a result from those wonderful phytochemicals the plant synthesizes. Next slide. As Adam mentioned, we have been working with Edacious, and which is a clinical lab testing facility and program. And we did a regen protein project, our pilot project, and some of the early findings that we found were really exciting. We were essentially looking at the nutritional profile of animal protein and animal protein products that came from farming systems that were more regenerative, and looked at them in comparison to animal protein products, the same exact ones that are grown or raised in more conventional systems. And what do we find? Very consistent with the research out there. Lower overall fat, particularly a certain kind of saturated fat that is less favorable, higher protein levels, and an improved omega-6 to omega-3 ratio, which I'll talk about in a moment, and higher omega-3 fatty acid levels, and of course, no heavy metals at all. So really good news here. And the exciting news is, next slide, we are really excited about the fact that this absolutely matters to our health. When we have higher levels of omega-3, that has been linked to improved heart health, improved insulin sensitivity for better blood sugars, reduced inflammation, supportive to brain health, cognitive function, mental health, mood regulation, and lower omega-6s to omega-3s. And typical in the diet is around 15:1, and optimal is more like 4:1 or even 2:1. We see when that ratio is lower, it is associated with better immune function, fewer autoimmune issues, again, reduced inflammation, reduced risk for cancer, and better overall outcomes in chronic diseases. Next slide. Additionally, when we see too many omega-3 fatty acids and too few omega-3 fatty acids, there's a higher risk for heart disease, obesity, and diabetes. Next slide. And we're really excited about the fact that we've expanded. We're not just doing animal protein products. We are working with a variety of foods. So we are working with now all different kinds of crops, from grains to nuts to seeds to fruits to vegetables, and working in partnership with Edacious to do all kinds of nutrient density testing, aggregating the data so we can continue to really build this case that soil health leads to better nutrition. So Edacious is actually our preferred service provider, and NDI members and SCI members, FCA members all get a discount, about 20% of working with Edacious and getting some of these results at $1,600. So we're very excited about that and really excited to share that information and amplify it as much as possible. Next slide. The last piece I will say, and I'm sorry this is so teeny, but one thing that we're very much looking forward to that we feel like is a hot space right now is the food as medicine programs that are out there and the regenerative school food programs out there. We see this as an incredible lever, not just to focus on climate health and environmental health, and better biodiversity and better nutrition, and overall better health, but we also really see it as a way to begin to support smaller communities, smallholder farms, and to really bring in the equity piece, because we know not everybody can access some of these regeneratively grown food and food products, but when we leverage it from the perspective of school food programs and food as medicine programs, we can really reach more people, which we really hope to do. Last slide. This is a true food transformation and a great pathway to get there. So connect with us in this way. We'd love to chat with you, love for you to visit us and become a member, and so excited to work with you in the future. Thanks so much. Jessica, you're muted.
I am just really struggling with tech today. Apologies, my friends. Mary and Adam, thank you so much for that great introduction to all of this amazing work, and how we all of our programs are engaging with the system. And now we're going to really jump into this conversation with Matt Cohen of SIMPLi. So let's just get ready for that. Adam and Mary, come and join us. We'll have a whole conversation. It'll be great. First of all, Matt, thank you so much for this time. Tell us, who is SIMPLi? What is SIMPLi? How are you different in this space than a lot of other companies?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me, Jessica, Adam, and Mary. Thank you for everyone joining on your Monday afternoon. Excited to share more about SIMPLi and what we do. So SIMPLi is a leading regenerative organic brand in the marketplace. We really focus on bringing the best quality products from around the world for you to enjoy. When we speak of quality, it goes hand in hand with nutrient density and just having really clean ingredients. So no glyphosates, no heavy metals, no pesticides in any of our products. And for us, it's really important not only how we source things and bringing the best quality products from around the world, but it's also working very closely with farmers and focusing on the environment as well. So focusing on the health of the soil, focusing on the farmer welfare, and all of that really goes hand in hand in order for us to bring great quality products to bring consumers worldwide.
Amazing. And can you tell us a little bit about really the origin of the company and how you got into this space and how you've built it over the past 5 years?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we started SIMPLi, which is only 5 years ago, we really built SIMPLi upon three pillars. It's around quality, it's around social impact, and environmental impact. We saw that when we went to, it was actually my co-founder who was in the restaurant industry. She was asking simple questions from suppliers. Where does the food come from? How is it grown? The people behind it. And the suppliers that she was working with at the time weren't able to answer those simple questions. And so that's really how SIMPLi came about. In terms of the name itself, we tried to be as simple as possible to really dive into the supply chains to answer those simple questions. And kind of fast forward today, it's a little bit more complex than that, but it's really important for us to have those farmer direct relationships. Today, we're in 13 countries in South America, Europe, Africa, and North America. So Canada, US, and even Mexico. And we saw that by working directly with the farmer, we could bring a product of integrity, bringing authentic products to market. But also by working directly with the farmer, we can really impact the farmers we work with around the world. The farmers do a lot of work, so much work behind the scenes that they don't get rewarded for. And so it was important for us to make sure that farmers are paid fairly for all the work that they're doing, to be true stewards of the land. And it was also equally important for us to really understand how things are grown and what type of soil are the products grown in. How do we improve the health of the soil so that we can increase the nutrient density of the products? And so looking for ways that we can increase the health of the soil through regenerative organic practices really was important for us and very much aligned with what SIMPLi does today. So fast forward to today, from a holistic standpoint, we really look at allowing farmers to be stewards of the land, to focus on the health of the soil. So with the combination of those two things, we can bring the best quality products to market. And that's what we do. So we're in your pantry staples. It's your beans, grains, oils. We really look at focusing on entire ecosystems, not just a cash crop, look at ways we can bring a primary crop to market, a secondary, and even a tertiary crop from the same farms to market to really incentivize farmers to promote regenerative agricultural practices.
That's amazing, Matt. I'll take the next question here. Could you talk a little bit more about, I mean, you all have scaled quite a bit. It's crazy to think that Simply was only founded like 5 years ago. As you've scaled, can you talk a little bit about how you've ensured that commitment to quality and those really integral relationships with the farmers? And I guess, like in particular, like how does your supply chain look maybe differently from another company's supply chain that's working in the same space? And how do you maintain those kinds of connections with farmers and with your supply chain that allows you to bring that quality forward?
Yes, absolutely. It's a great question, Adam, and something that we're continuing to refine on an ongoing basis. We internally at Simply have developed a framework called the Regenerative Pathway Program that it takes any farmer from where they are today and develops a plan, a goal for them to become organic or regenerative organic. And then we'll incentivize the farmer through the entire journey, not just at the beginning point, not at the end point, but through the entire journey. It's really important for us to establish those long-term relationships with farmers so that they're incentivized and so that they're supported and provided guidance to go through the certification process. So I think that's one of the ways that we stand out. Our supply chains is another way we stand out. When we say that we work directly with the farmers, we truly do purchase the product at the farm level. We will then take that product from the farm, consolidate it with other farmers in the region, take it to a processing facility to get processed and packaged, and then we'll export it ourselves out of country of origin into the United States to our warehouse, mainly which is in New Jersey, Dayton, New Jersey. And then from there, we work with distributors, both in retail and food service, to get it to whether it's on the shelf or to restaurants and operators across the country in all 50 states. So we do have fully vertical supply chains. I think that's one of the main ways we stand out, especially in the CPG space versus other brands out there. But second, it's also the work that we do on the ground with the farmers, our team of agronomists, and supporting the farmers through the entire journey as well.
I've got the next question here, Matt, and of course I'm going to talk about or ask about nutrient density. I can attest to the incredible nutrient density that I can taste in your zucchini beans, but I'm curious about how you're expanding that commitment to nutrient density. Talking about it, have you gotten some nutrient density testing done, and how do they compare to the conventional market or the general market?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one thing that we're really excited about that we're starting to roll out. And similar to what you shared earlier and during your presentation, Mary, is that we do see the benefits of regenerative organic agriculture and the correlation it has with higher nutrient density in the products. So for us, we focus on pantry staples. So for your beans and for your grains and your oils, our goal as a company is to support farmers to facilitate ways to increase nutrient density in the products that you are eating, whether it's at home with your friends and family or while you're eating out at restaurants and other kind of channels. And so our expectations, we're going through the process right now, which is similar to you guys partner with Audacious to have a third party validate the nutrient claims that we'll bring to market. But we're really excited and expected to have 20 to 50% increase in nutrient value versus conventional products across the board. We will share more of that in the coming months. And it's going to live on the packaging as well. So when you go to the store and whether it's on the NFP panel or even on the front of the products, you're going to see that type of call outs in terms of the not only the premium of the quality of the products, but also the increase of nutrient and the nutritional value that the products have.
Can I ask you a follow-up question there? Because one of the things that we hear from people is they want to put it on pack, they want to have it on their, whether it's the nutrition facts panel or just the package itself, and people are worried about regulation. People are worried about, getting lawyers involved. So how are you navigating those kinds of conversations with lawyers or regulators when it comes to making statements on your packages?
Absolutely. I mean, that is a benefit that Audacious does offer, but we also are doing our own due diligence. We have internal protocols, and our marketing team and QA team is working with regulators and other certifying bodies that to make sure that what we are stating is factual and correct. We don't want to mislead consumers. It's extremely important that what we're saying or what we're providing to consumers with what they're eating is in fact extremely validated and accurate. And so that's very important for us as a company to understand what we can or may not be able to say. But ultimately, it gets back to just being. It's getting back to the simplicity of it. When we say that, hey, you're eating a more nutritious gigante bean that comes from Castoria, Greece, versus other large lima beans or northern beans from other parts of the world, we're going to have a third party validation lab test results to further validate that.
Amazing. And we can't wait to amplify that work as well. Thank you so much.
Yeah, love to be able to elevate that data, educate consumers. I think that's a really great way to educate not only your consumers but consumers broadly so that they understand the difference. I am just wondering, and a question that we hear a lot is, especially with everything that's going on right now, is how do we make sure that these healthier, higher quality foods are more accessible to the public? SIMPLi products are amazing. They are at a tiny, a little bit higher of a price point because of the sourcing and the amazing work that you guys put in on the back end. And I'm just curious if there are, are you looking at or thinking about ways to do programs or do products where there might be that lower price point. One of my favorite right now is Lundberg has a product that's broken rice. There's nothing wrong with it, it's just cracked in half, so they're able to sell that. I'm just curious if that's something that you're thinking about as we move forward.
Yeah, and that gets back to kind of our RPP program and incentivizing farmers to go through the entire process. So we work with farmers that are transitional from conventional to organic. So they may not have the premium that a regenerative organic certified farm has, but we're providing them with a premium that incentivizes them to go from conventional to organic. And we link that up with customers, say in our food service portfolio. It could be a meal kit, or it could be a quick service restaurant group that is willing to pay that premium for that transitional process. And so it's important for us to create the demand for that entire journey. So whether it's a transitional journey or organic, they're organic certified or regenerative organic certified. And so aligning the incentives between our customers with our suppliers. And look, I think at the end of the day, it's what we're solving for is malnutrition in the soil that's contributing to malnutrition of consumers. And I think consumers are more now than ever more willing to pay for a premium to be healthier, to be able to perform better, whether it's in the office, on the field, or just to feel better when they're with friends and family. And we're seeing that with the healthcare system and the food system really overlapping one another. That because people and consumers are willing to pay a premium, we're able to offer that premium to farmers and really accelerate this movement around regenerative organic agriculture and also nutrient density.
Amazing. Yes, I love, and we talked about this a little bit. Mary, I think it was a great point you made in New York last week around that, malnutrition abundance and its opposite are quite similar. It's just dependent on what you're able to consume. And I think there's such a beautiful connection there.
Absolutely. And the other thing too that's interesting about that is many people are consuming a sufficient amount of calories and maybe even excess calories, but they're still hungry. We call that hidden hunger, because they're not actually getting the nutrition that they need, even if they're getting enough food per se.
Yeah, and that's one thing I will say. When we eat SIMPLi beans, you can eat like half as much because they're so delicious and filling. So love that. But then you have leftovers. Well, thank you. This is such a great conversation. This is obviously a conversation that we are going to keep having, not only broadly but very specifically with Matt and with SIMPLi and the whole great team there. I just wanted to because we are a network that is focused on how do we learn and engage, and you've all been participating in this conversation with us, is I just want to drop a little question in the chat for you all to respond to, whether you respond to it in the chat, whether you go home and think about it and let us know later. This is just really something that we are all four of us on this call and the broader groups that we work with, is how do we collectively collaborate to elevate this idea of nutrient density results to help consumers with these purchasing decisions. There are great brands, obviously SIMPLi, a lot of other partners we work with who do this on their packaging, but it's hard. People look at things so quickly. What would make you say, oh, hey, that's a really interesting fact or piece of data? Would just love if anyone, wants to jump in or drop it in the chat, or again, just think about it in your daily life, because as we build this system, as we build together, we also need to be collectively addressing this education, this sharing of real data, to make sure that we are all on the same page with that. So with that said, thank you all for joining us. This was really fun. This was really fabulous. We love being able to engage further, and we hope to see you at future events.